very good afternoon to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome each one of you to this virtual session on Discover the Business Climate of Israel. The objective of this session is to interact with the officials from the Council General of Israel and learn more about the investment opportunity in Israel. The representatives will be very glad to discuss on the assistance or the guidance provided by the foreign investors who are interested in Israel. In addition, the economic development and the business incentives that could benefit the Indian companies considering the business expansion in Israel will also be discussed. This session is being organized under the aegis of the International Business Export Committee of BCIC. We would like to specially thank Mr. K. Ravi, past president at KCCI and the present chairman of the International Business Export Committee of the BCIC, and also Dr. Bose Nair, co-chairman of the International Business Export Committee of BCIC and vice president World Trade Center Bangalore, for curating this session for the benefit of the members. Next slide. These are the basic etiquettes that I request all the participants to kindly follow. Keep your mic muted at all times and the webcam options also, so that the speakers can have that. So this will enhance the bandwidth for better reception of them. And request you to kindly post your questions only in the chat box. That will the moderator will be able to guide you, and we can respond according to that. Program. So the speakers for the program will be like this. Our president will do the welcome address, and then we hear the introduction and the setting of the theme for today's session by Mr. K. Ravi, and we hear from His Excellency Mr. Jonathan, and then the presentation on invest opportunity in Israel by Dr. Sai Moses, and then sharing of experience of doing business by UL Kaddish will be hearing, and then we'll have a question and answer session, and finally we'll conclude with Dr. Bose Nair summing up the session. So may I now invite our President, Mr. T.R. Parshuram, President of BCIC, to kindly do the welcome address. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Prithvi.
Thank you, sir.
Very good afternoon to all. I extend a very hearty welcome, one and all, for today's session on understanding the business opportunities in Israel and what India and Israel can do together. So on this occasion, I extend a very hearty welcome to His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Zadka, Consulate General of Israel to South India. Hearty welcome, sir. Dr. Shai Moses, Consulate General for Trade and Economic Affairs, Israel to South India, Bangalore. Hearty welcome, sir. Mr. Yoav Kaddish, entrepreneur and founder of Shifa Tel Aviv, Israel. So hearty welcome, sir. And my special thanks to Mr. Ravi, the chairman of International Business Expert Committee of BCIC, and Dr. Bose Nair, the co-chairman of International Business Expert Committee and the chief of the World Trade Center, Bangalore. Ladies and gentlemen, and very, very good evening to one and all once again. So this is a very special day for us because we always cherish the association with Israel. Though we had a very, very long history with Israel, India and Israel work together on many areas of common interest. And today it is one of the important partners of mutual trade and industry. At the outset, I would like to thank Israel government for sending medical aid like the individual and group oxygen generators, respirators, medicines, and other medical equipments to India to help the country to fight the spread of the coronavirus. Thank you so much, sir. I think we have been facing a very, very challenging times. And in fact, the whole world is going through a big crisis. Though India survived the wave one, but wave two has been a very, very severe wave. And today we're all going through a very difficult, challenging time. But I think that we should be able to come out of this current situation. And from Bangalore Chambers also, we have been driving several initiatives. We are working very closely with the government of Karnataka. We have started the helpline. We have set up a lot of volunteers to support, and we are also supporting the government in a quick arrangement of getting the crematorium and deep freezers for mortuary and many other support, getting the latest information on the medication, vaccination, etc. So we are continuously discussing and hope that the situation should come to control in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So this provision of emergency assistance shows the deep friendship between the two countries in this difficult time, and especially the support of Israel for India. Once again, I sincerely thank Israel government for this great gesture. Though India officially recognized Israel as an important trade partner, both the countries recognized each other in 1950, and full establishment of diplomatic relationship and ties started on 29th January 1992 after India opened the economy for world market under the prime ministership of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao. This opened several numerous opportunities for partnerships and business cooperation between the two countries. India and Israel engage in significant trade and have numerous mutual projects and investments of common interest. Today, India is Israel's largest client for arms, and in return, Israel gets vocal support from the world's largest democracy, which significantly boosts its political and diplomatic leverage. The youth of India, Israel, and other like-minded nations can join hands in this drive as a responsible society to protect our inner strength, self-power, and nurturing our abilities to bring the best out of both the countries. Thousands of years of history of human creativity, intelligence, and innovation tell that the best of the human mind is yet to come. Many more new business models must come, and there must always be a scope for some fresh air and great ideas on innovation. As of December 2020, India is among 164 United Nations member states who have a great diplomatic ties with Israel. India is currently the fastest growing target economy for Israel export. This is currently, though a 2 plus trillion economy, we are eyeing towards 5 trillion economy by 2025, which is not very far off. In addition, the two countries have a very close relationship, which has helped both the countries to prosper, and this relationship has strengthened, especially in the recent years. Israel is a country known for the technical and entrepreneurial prowess of its citizens, with the highest number of engineers per capita in the world. It's a great one. And second highest level of spending on research and development, which is significantly high at 4.3% of GDP. This is something that shows the country's passion for research and development. This is a mammoth expenditure and goes a long way to explaining why Israel has such an advantage compared to other countries with its startup ecosystem. Israel has been a center of technology innovation since the very beginning. Israel engineers have solved some of the most complicated challenges in computer science, engineering, creating sophisticated IT infrastructure, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, fintech, and software development tools. Israel is also incredibly known for its development of unicorns, with the country having more than 45 startups with a value of over 1 billion as of 2021. This is an amazing number. I think a country of size of Israel with 45 unicorns, hats off to the people, and this reinforces the pedigree of Israel as a country that produces incredible startup with effective business models and innovative technologies. India as a country, still we have not crossed 100. I think Israel, hats off. This is a great thing that we should learn from this country. This number has grown significantly from 30 unicorns in 2020, and 15 unicorns have been added in the last 1 year. I must congratulate Israel for agricultural revolution which took place in recent years. Israel is a role model for the whole world in growing crops in a limited available land and water resource. If I have to say, the Indian agriculture has the potential to double or even triple its outputs, say in the next 15 to 20 years, many people will laugh it straight away. But the reality is that many countries have done, and Israel has one of been role models. At least this is what I can learn from a comparative study of Indian Israel agriculture in a just released book, From Food Scarcity to Surplus: Innovations in Indian, Chinese, and Israeli Agriculture by Mr. Ashok Gulati, Yuan Zhou, and Jikun Ham. We would like to hear more from the new business climate in Israel from these eminent speakers who are present here. Once we recover from the pandemic, I'm sure we should have some physical meetings, and I look forward to a delegation from Israel to Bangalore Chambers and vice versa. Hope this happens, and this is our dream. So it is once again my duty to thank one and all of you, and once again I welcome the honorary consulate generals and the consulate general from Israel, and the trade bodies and the industrialists, and all the participants for having taken time to participate in this very, very important session. Once again, thank you very much. I hope you'll have a great session today. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, President. That was a wonderful start for the session. You had given a lot of statistics data and the relationship that Israel and India have. It's a great one, sir. So now I request Mr. K. Ravi to do the introduction and set the theme for today's session and take forward the session, sir. Over to you, sir. So you have to unmute the mic.
Yeah. Thank you, Prithvi.
Thank you.
And thanks to the President for starting off the session today with a very warm welcome note. Firstly, I would like to have the pleasure of introducing the speakers for today. After that, I would like to say a few observations from my side. The keynote speaker for today, His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Zatka, has very impressive credentials. He arrived in India in September 2020 from Beijing, where he acted as Deputy Chief of Mission since 2017. Prior to this, he was the Director of Department for Policy Planning and Assessment in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 2014. Mr. Zatka is a career diplomat since 2002 when he joined the Foreign Service as a diplomatic cadet. His career took him across continents as he completed diplomatic posts in Bucharest, Tokyo, Canberra, was assigned as the Israel's special envoy to the Pacific Island, and Beijing. While in headquarters, Ms. Zatka was head of workforce planning and inspection section, human resources and personal training and development division. Prior to joining the Foreign Service, Mr. Zatka held a research and consulting position in the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, and worked as an analyst for the Prime Minister's office. Mr. Zatka holds an MBA from Israel's Institute of Technology, Technion, and a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations and Political Science from the Hebrew University, Jerusalem. He is also a qualified strategic organizational consultant credited by the Israeli Coaching Association. Sir, I have the pleasure to present you the Consul General of Israel to South India in Bangalore, His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Zatka. Welcome to you, sir. We have another very important speaker, Dr. Shai Moses. My dear friend, Dr. Shai Moses has been here in Bangalore, I think for the last 3 years, I suppose. Incidentally, what is very interesting is Dr. Shai has his origins in India. Probably when you see him, you can make out. And Dr. Moses is the former Israeli commercial attaché to Switzerland and also the deputy ambassador to the World Trade Organization. As deputy ambassador to the WTO, he represented Israel and served as the chief negotiator, based in Geneva, to the WTO and the Doha Development Round. During his tenure in Geneva, Dr. Moses also served as the WTO chairman of the Anti-Dumping Committee and also as the acting chairman of the Committee on Import Licensing Practices. In fact, Dr. Moses has organized several programs. I think the Window to Israel or something like that about 2 years back. It was a very big success in Bangalore, and a lot of programs have been held. And Israel has always been, the consulate in Bangalore have been very, very proactive. Presently, Dr. Shai is Moses is the Consul for Trade and Economic Affairs, and he is the go-to man for anything on business, and that's why he's here presenting about what are the opportunities in Israel, and he's the when stationed in Bangalore. And to have a perspective from the other side, it's always nice to have people from the government telling about what they have and what we can do. But an entrepreneur and a founder of Shepa, Mr. Yol Kadish, Mr. Yol has an Indian connection as well. See, India has got connections everywhere. He has stayed in India for over 20 years. That's very special. So he understands the Indian mindset very well. An innovative and results driven international management consultant with a track record of success in building profitable companies in both domestic and international markets. As managing director at Shepa, a full service international consulting and investment banking firm based out of Tel Aviv and Mumbai, he leads and manages consulting projects across multiple industry sectors and regions. With over 4 decades of rich experience in cross border transactions in Israel, India, Italy, and Switzerland, he has built an excellent reputation as a global thought leader and influencer with a passion for helping entrepreneurs and growth stage business connect to global markets. He travels to countries around the world working with and advising entrepreneurs, CEOs, and owners of business on how to think global and develop disruptive marketing strategies that sets them apart from the competition. Before forming Shepa, Mr. Yol sold his ultra luxury fenestration and security business to a large conglomerate in India after spending 20 years in India and successfully bridged the gap between foreign companies to India and vice versa. I think we have an eminent panel here. Our Consul General, the commercial division of the Consul General, and also Mr. Yol from Israel, Tel Aviv, who will give us an insight. With this small introduction of the speakers, I would like to, on behalf of BCIC as the chairman, I would like to share a few thoughts before we request His Excellency to give his keynote address. On behalf of BCIC, I specially acknowledge the presence of His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Zatka, Consul General of Israel to South India, Mr. Shai Moses, the Consul for Trade and Economic Affairs of Israel, Mr. Yol Kadish, entrepreneur and founder of Shepa, and the entire team of the Israeli consulate in Bangalore for providing the chamber a unique opportunity to organize this interactive session. In these changing times of COVID-19, all of us are going through some unprecedented situation, as mentioned by our president. Work from home, virtual meetings have become the new norm. In fact, we all feel, as Mr. Jonathan mentioned, it's so nice seeing each other. It's become so very scarce, our not meeting physically, at least virtually we are able to meet today. Bangalore, as you know, has always been the happening city in the world. And today, this city is in the forefront of COVID positivity in India. Let us all pray that India comes back to normalcy in the coming weeks. As part of the corporate social responsibility, BCIC, under the leadership of our president, has taken a number of initiatives and projects partnering the state government to mitigate the suffering from this dreaded virus. In fact, I just wanted, this is the COVID season, I wanted to also mention to members who are attending today that I've been hearing a number of press reports that Israel is back to normal with majority of the population vaccinated and people are going around without masks. Sir, compliments to you and your country. At this juncture, we seek, as mentioned by our president, assistance by having tie-ups with Israeli companies who have got technology to combat the virus. According to Times of Israel, a nasal spray that has been developed by an Israeli-raised biochemist in Canada, which can kill 99.9% of the virus particles, has started rolling off production lines in an Israeli factory. This is what I am told by the newspaper. This is a special spray that does not just block viruses, but actually kills them. We in India look forward for this wonder spray from Israel. Incidentally, I also had the privilege of being a part of the delegation of farmers to Israel by the Karnataka State Mango Development Corporation to adopt scientific production and management techniques. In fact, currently 40% of the mango produced in India is damaged due to fruit flies. An Israeli company called Biofeed had created traps for attracting and killing the female fruit flies, which are a menace for mangoes. These traps, in fact, have reduced the damage to the extent of 35%. Those who have not seen Israel, I think, should see the place to believe it. My small trip to see a desert when converted into a greenery, it's something amazing. Sir, coming back to our session today, as the chairman of the International Business Expert Committee, we have envisaged the vision of engaging members in exploring international trade, expand their businesses to new markets, understand the rapidly changing trade environment, and keep current with global trade issues. And this program is organized on similar lines. Virtual meetings with consulates and embassies and creating awareness on international opportunities to our members was one of the objectives of our committee. I am happy that we are having this event after a similar program with Netherlands a month back and a physical meeting with the ambassador of Poland who was in India, who was in Bangalore. We are focusing on countries like South Korea, Germany, Japan and Taiwan in the coming months. Now, Karnataka, as you all know, is the first in the IT and ITS export and the fourth largest skilled workforce and more than 400 research and development centers. Top 15 startup ecosystems in the world and 400 of the Fortune 500 companies have their operations in Karnataka. Now, with Bangalore, one of the prominent R&D hubs of India, I am sure we can foresee a great possibility of science and technology cooperation with Karnataka and Israel. Trade, technology, and tourism would be the three key areas in India-Israeli economic relations in times to come. India already has a robust defense ties with Israel. India, in fact, is the largest buyer of Israeli military equipment, and Israel is the second largest defense supplier to India after Russia. This is something many people do not know. Now, coming to Israel, I know it has the third highest rate of entrepreneurship. There is vast potential for India-Israel partnership in this area. The India-Israel Innovation Bridge will act as a link between the startups of the two sides. Indian industries, startups, and the academic institutions, according to me, must collaborate with their Israeli counterparts to access the huge reservoir of knowledge. India, sir, has size and scale, and Israel has sharpness and edge. There would be many ideas and technologies that can be useful for or can be commercially scaled up in India. In fact, bilateral relations are increasing in several areas. One can find new fields like medical, water, and sophisticated agricultural technologies, besides the traditional field of defense. In terms of size of companies, one can find many relatively young and small companies developing the relations and business content in India. In terms of depth of collaboration, the relations are evolving from seller buyer relation to deeper phases of joint production and joint development by India and Israel players. Sir, we at BCIC would like to assure the Consul General that we will give all assistance that is required for companies coming from Israel and wanting to set up their business or having joint ventures with companies in Bangalore. These companies will have the benefit of interacting and collaborating with over 800 strong BCIC membership, both large and MSMEs. BCIC, in fact, has acquired a new and more spacious office in MG Road. We invite you and your colleagues to our new office once the COVID wave subsides. I am sure the deliberations of this program would provide our members more insights on understanding the opportunities of doing business with Israel. With these few opening remarks, I would like to hand it over back to Prithvi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravi sir, for the wonderful introduction and setting the tone. Now, May I now invite His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Zatka, Consul General of Israel, South India, to give the keynote address for today's session, sir. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and we really appreciate this opportunity to interact and engage with the audience and, of course, with BCIC. I want to personally thank President of BCIC, TR Parasuman, and Mr. K. Rafi, Chairman of International Business Experts Committee, BCIC, my colleague, Dr. Shai Moses, of course, and Mr. Yoel Kadish from Shefa for joining us. And of course, Boz Nair, who would, of course, familiar with and would be love to hear his conclusion later on. I think you've made my life extremely, both of you, made my life extremely complicated in follow-up for your, I think, too kind remarks. But basically, I think you've touched both Mr. President and Mr. K. Ravi both touched, the key elements of this issue. Now, when we planned and prepared to have this session, to be honest, I was thinking of in different lines, and I had something prepared the day before yesterday, but the events of the last few days and basically of today, I decided to scrap it and to start from a different angle to come to the same point. I have to start by basically sharing. You went over my resume, but coming from China, I was the subject of Indian goodwill. So when the pandemic first struck, I was in Beijing. You can imagine how complicated that was, and Israel was in dire straits and required a lot of attention and a lot of resources, PPE equipment, and so on. And India was one of the countries that offered assistance in the most immediate manner. And even sitting in Beijing, I remember my N95 mask was something given and produced by the government of India and in support of Israel. So for us to now provide you with some small token of support is a sheer pleasure and a privilege. I would not dare call it assistance or anything else. This is what friends do, and this is what should be done without any prejudice. So of course, we all are in Bangalore at the moment. We understand how the severity of the situation. We are positive that India and Karnataka and Bangalore would come out of it, and we are here to support you in any way manner. You've both mentioned the government-to-government, let's say, aid that is coming through, and this is indeed would come through the next few days. This is, by the way, huge amounts of oxygen-related materials, if it's industrial facilities that are able to support an entire hospital, to basically oxygen generators and so on. But the key element here is not the G2G, let's say, engagement and collaboration, but rather the people-to-people and B2B engagement. And I think I would want to start with this and put the emphasis on that. When this initiative, when people in Israel learned about the severity of the situation in India, we were overwhelmed by people offering help, offering assistance, inquiring of what they can do, how they can send equipment back, forth to India, and so on. And it came to the point in which a designated task force was established in Israel that had to basically collect and gather all of these good, let's call them goodwill initiatives, and bring about something that is, at the end of the day, tangible, that we can basically put on a plane and send it over to India. And this shipment of goods, of equipment, of let's call it goodwill that you would see on the next 3 days, it's not only G2G. It's a lot of good intention by a lot of private people, and more of all, it's a lot of good intention of business to business, of companies that have been engaging for a very long time, and let's say this time around, the Israeli company thought that its counterpart or its local employees or the local community in which they work in India would require such assistance, and this came very much in an automatic manner. So you can find a lot of support there coming in from actual business partners, from Israeli companies, from Israeli individuals, people that actually lived here and spent time in India and felt that this is something that needs to be done. And I think this cannot happen with too many countries, especially for us, and I'm sure not for India, for things that to happen in such a manner, in such a magnitude, and in such an automatic manner. And I think this is, let's call it, a medal of honor to the goodwill and good relations between our two countries. And when I take it to the business element, I think this is an important element, that business is done in such a manner in which you still find it in your, basic heart, in the essence of engagement, to support your partner in any way, manner in this circumstances, regardless of the business relations. And I think the key element that I would want to address is this afternoon. One of them is this state of mind, an open state of mind, a very seeking state of mind. I think both from India to Israel and from Israel to India, trying to engage in any manner possible. The second element would be the similarity. So you were very kind in mentioning Israel's advantages, attributes, and so on. I would like to reciprocate, if you would allow me, and basically say that, again, coming into Bangalore and trying, for me as a newcomer, I've been here for just less than 1 year, to understand what can we do better, how can we interact in a better manner. I tried to look at the similarities, and when I found, let's call it an ecosystem to make it, to simplify the situation. When I found an ecosystem, a local ecosystem that has a very strong application, let's call it application-based economy, all right, one of the key elements. This is something that is very similar to Israel, which basically the essence of manufacturing is not necessarily important. And when you look at a lot of business initiatives in Bangalore, the actual manufacturing units is not necessarily important. Of course, there are those who are extremely important, but I'm talking about those that would be more similar to Israel. And then you would have these open platform, integral and integrating platforms, open internet, English as a business language, a very strong pool of talent, a very strong support for engineering, again in English. This is not something you can find in anywhere, and I think basically engagement in this sense could bring about a lot of potential for both countries. In this case, it would be for both ecosystem, if you would want to call it the ecosystem of Bangalore and the ecosystem of Tel Aviv. And this is very different from other places in the world. And this is an advantage that you can find, and this is something that basically we are trying to make sure everyone understands on both sides. And then again, we can go to the advantages that you've very eloquently went through when it comes to the Israeli ecosystem, but we can also look at what's happening in India, the advantages that Israeli companies would have in collaborating with their Indian partners, the ability to make sure so whatever they do would be relevant to, let's say, local marketers in India and for a global, let's call it, focal point in Bangalore for the rest of the world. This is something that is very unique and something that I think we should try to make advantage of. I think the key element that is missing, and I think part of what we're doing here today is extremely important, is an issue of, let's call it, awareness for the sake of argument. So there is a lot of good know-how about what's happening in Israel, what's happening in India. Israel is very famous in India for many things, but when it comes to the actual awareness to Israel being a potential partner for collaboration, it's not necessarily number one, not in Bangalore, not in India. And to be honest, India is not number one when it comes to Israel. So we might both be looking at North America. When people want to raise capital, they would mainly look at the U.S. market, would look at North America as a point of interaction. We need to make sure that more people in India are aware of the potential of doing that in Israel, and more people in Israel are aware of the potential of doing that in India, using both of these advantages as a way to kickstart an engagement, as to kickstart, some sort of covering for your shortcoming. For Israel, we don't have a local market for many things. We require a lot of assistance. We need a way to bridge into the global market, and India could be a very important way to do that. And when you look at elements of, let's say, when I spoke about app-based economy, when you look at that and drill down into deep tech, this is exactly the situation that we can promote. This is the agenda that I think we should push for. This is deep tech in any sector, by the way. It doesn't have to be necessarily IT or anything. The Israeli companies, and I think when we look at the approach of Indians investing in Israel, okay, it's also the element of explaining the importance of finding a right partner in India that is, at the end of the day, can jump link the Israeli companies or the Israeli partner into either the entire or a large portion of the market in India and globally. When we look at the Abraham Accords, recently Israel has been promoting its relations and signing diplomatic accords with many countries in the Persian Gulf. This is a key element when we look at future engagement between Israel and India, because of the vested interest India has there, because of the importance for the Gulf for India and the interest that India has there, and the very strong engagement between that. We are newcomers coming into that. I think there's a lot of way to find trilateral cooperation points between Israel, any of the Gulf countries, and of course India. This is a key element that can allow us to move forward. Even if you look at the basic elements of arriving from Israel to India, going past the Gulf, the countries in the Gulf, it basically makes the trip much shorter than it used to be. This is an amazing opportunity to push through. I want to relate to two examples of the things that we're doing in the consulate that basically support what I was just mentioning, and I think supports in many ways the issues that were raised earlier. One of them, and I think you actually, this is funny, Mr. K. Ravi, you actually use the same terms as we do. So we have established what we call a bridge of innovation between Israel and the CCAMP, which is, I think, familiar to most of you in Bangalore, the Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms, and basically enabling cutting-edge technology in life science and deep tech to put through between Israel and India. And the idea is for this local platform, which is basically basically deriving a lot of energy and resources both from academia and industry in India, and pushing it and collaborating it with the Israeli startup ecosystem, by which we together with them can become the bridge in order to push through a lot of collaboration, if it's R&D, if it's joint developments, or even if it's just transfer of technology between the Israeli startup ecosystem and the Indian one. And the idea is to partner the Indian startups through CCAMP with the Israeli startup through different agencies like our National Innovation Authority, or NGOs like the Startup Nation Central, and of course through government platforms like Dr. Moses and ourselves. And the idea is basically for us to be able to create a sort of bridge that would bridge the gap for the shortcomings I was mentioning before, allowing us to move past, allowing them, to have a sort of jump over this gap and engage with in a more secure manner. And of course, there is a lot of issues regarding funding, and part of the element is to try to connect these collaboration into the national I4F scheme that allows allow support and funding for such collaborations. And I'll just give you an example from our last let's say show of interest. So we've reached out through CCAMP to Indian companies. We had basically 39, let's say, approved companies that have approached us, out of which more than 20 were extremely interesting, and 11 of them were actually submitted to the I4F. I don't know how many of them would actually get the funding, but think about it. These people have approached, these companies have approached to find an Israeli partner, and regardless of anything, they were already qualifying to get a joint government funding for R&D for the long run. So this is something that really a good example and demonstrate the nature of the way that we want to do things, allowing a natural order of things to take part and basically bridge any gaps and smooth along difficulties in order to reach to the right endpoint. The other element, it relates again to a topic that you've mentioned. I'm happy that that's the case, and again something that the Ministry of Economy and Industries in Israel and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are taking part of and leading it together with Shai Moses. We're doing this right here. So basically, we are trying to push and engage Israeli agriculture technology and make it very relevant to the sort of needs on the ground, by which not just, let's say, promoting just, let's say, a drip irrigation, but to push it into different sector in which these technologies were not relevant, were not present yet. And there's so many examples of the things that we're trying to do. This could be coffee, this could be tea, this could be sugarcane, this could be rice. By the way, think of rice with drip irrigation. It could be avocados and other sort of fruit. And again, in this way, together, we're trying to be the bridge. We're trying to make sure that even if there are gaps along the way, we are able to sort them out. We're able to kick them out of the way, so the companies would be able to engage in a smoother manner, and by which we can introduce better technology. We're talking about smart, precise agriculture technology, not something that you necessarily would find available from Israeli companies in India at any given time. And we want to make sure that this comes to the point that even though we have on the ground, let's call it grassroots cooperation in an element of agriculture, at the same time we can also promote the smart elements, the big data elements, the elements that can later on be scaled up in a very serious manner. So just to sum up, I want to again thank you for this opportunity to engage. I think this is for creating this awareness, for creating this platform in which we can all discuss and we can all promote these issues. This is the most important thing. I want to remind you again about the state of mind, the goodwill that is existing. These things are on the table. We just need to pick them up. I want to remind you of the similarities and the elements that would relate to promoting issue, especially when it comes to application-based economy. I want to raise again the issue of potential. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration, but the potential is huge, and we need to make sure that we need not to waste it. And again, the need for better awareness. By this, I want to conclude, and thank you again for this opportunity, and hopefully this would be the first of many engagement. Thank you again, and please keep safe.
Thank you, His Excellency, Mr. Jonathan Zedek. It was a wonderful talk you gave to us, an inspiring one. Ravi, you want to add something?
I think our Consul General has has given a bird's eye view, and being a part of the Prime Minister's office, I'm sure he is a very influential person. And secondly, since he's just come back from China, I think our Consul General should tell Indians what is the secret and how can we become more competitive, or some of the key elements which he has observed. Probably when we meet him next time, we'll surely do that. And I think thank you very much, sir, His Excellency, for a very nice opening, keynote address by you. And I'm sure our Shai Moses will give us a deeper insight into the business. I think a lot of questions have also come. I think we'll take it up after the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. It's over to Dr. Sai Moses, the Council for Trade and Economic Affairs, Consul General of Israel, South India, Bangalore. He'll be giving a presentation on the investment opportunities in Israel. Over to you, Dr. Sai.
Thank you very much, dear President of BCIC, my friend Ravi, Dr. Nair, my colleague Consul General Jonathan, Yoel from Israel, and all dear members of BCIC. It's a really honor and privilege to be here with you today in this seminar. And again, hearing all the previous speakers, I have to admit that seems to be a lot of awareness and knowledge about Israel. So it's already a good indication of things are going well between our two lovely countries. In a way, I'm here already for the past 4+ years, and I have witnessed from firsthand the increased warm relationship between Israel and India. In fact, just before COVID started, we saw a continuously increase of business visitors from India to Israel and from Israel to India, given the fact that we have so many Israelis who also travel usually after the military service and coming and live for a couple of months or a year or so in India. I see all this, what the previous speakers also mentioned about the people-to-people kind of engagement. I see it from first hand. And also, even with the COVID, who unfortunately is still with us, even almost a year and a half now, and especially now the second wave in India, as again, as challenging as it is, I take also note of this kind of special relations we have about the assistance that India gave Israel last year, and now the assistance that we try to give as friends also this time around. So really it warms my heart, especially as Ravi mentioned, that I do have some kind of origins of India with me, and maybe not many people know, but there is a vast community of Israelis with Indian origin in Israel, so it also contributes to the lovely ties between the two countries. And what I thought in this short time I have, and again, many good points are already been covered in the previous speakers, is to give some kind of an overview. Maybe I also share some presentations so you can see a bit of nicely on the screen itself, and then maybe we can take it forward afterwards with the Q&A to go a bit deeper. So I'm going to the presentation and I hope everyone sees that. Ravi, can you see the presentation?
Yeah, it is clear.
Excellent. So again, just to pinpoint a few facts about Israel for those members who maybe less know about our small country. Well, in a way, it's a small, okay? It's something like, I don't know, the size of Assam, maybe as a state, compared to India. And we have only about 1 crore people. So given that India nowadays already, people mentioned there are some 140 crores, so India size is 140 times Israel in terms of population. What's an interesting fact to know is that also the geographical size of India is 100 times Israel as such. So the actual ratio remains the same. And our capital is Jerusalem, also known very much as Tel Aviv as the high-tech city of Israel. And again, we are located here in the Middle East, just across between Europe, Africa, and Asia as such. And nowadays, from India, we have the Air India flying from Delhi to Tel Aviv for around 6.5 hours or 7 hours, a direct flight. So this is also a wonderful opportunity to increase our travels again. It happened before the COVID, and I'm sure once we are prevailing with this COVID situation, all this travel will resume. And again, it's a part of the OECD. We have around a GDP per capita of $42,000, very good rating, near zero inflation for many years, and overall the economy is strong. Just put it in context again. Since joining the OECD around a decade ago, so a lot of comparison we do between among these countries. So we see we are relatively in the middle in terms of the GDP per capita. In terms of the growth, usually Israel has a very strong economic growth compared to other developed countries, which is also quite unique. And in terms of unemployment, usually, again, it's around 4% in Israel. With the pandemic happening last year, it is jumped to a two-digit unemployment. But nowadays, again, as we are a bit more in control over the pandemic, it's coming down rapidly. In terms of educated people, I think this is one of the reasons we see a lot of high tech and a lot of strength on the technological strengths. It's coming also from investing a lot in higher education, and this is somewhere here where we are. In terms of more focus on the technological scene that we have, I think it also connects to the challenges that Israel also face. Again, relatively a young country, since 1948, a lot of migration, diversity of people coming. So it's a challenge, but also a strength in a way. Diverse population. Again, like I mentioned, community coming from India or from Europe or from the US, etc. So I guess each of these challenge is also could explain some of the strength that we have in Israel. The challenging geopolitical environment, sometimes it's also a bit similar maybe to the situation in India, and no major natural resources. This was some things that escort us for many, many years until we had also some discovery of the natural gas base. But still, it's a very technological driven country with more than 300 multinationals, R&D centers, MNCs in Israel, almost 10,000 startups, which is also quite unique for a small economy, and many ranking in the top of different listing, including a very interesting one that Israel is ranked third in the listed companies on NASDAQ. So it's US, China, and Israel in terms of the most listed companies in NASDAQ. Some of the things that also characteristics of Israel is the diversity of implementing the innovation and technology among different fields. So drip irrigation and agriculture, it's one of the forefronts that also Jonathan mentions that we are trying to see how we can adapt it better here in India. But for example, the peel cam was a great solution for digestive and doing surgery in the digestive systems. Actually came from originally from the defense establishment as a cam for a missile, and then it got shrunk and also got used for medical purposes. We have different things that sometimes you're not aware. For example, ways was bought by Google, and now some of the algorithm is used in Google Maps and so on. So different kinds of things. Checkpoint is very active also in India, having been the forefront of the firewall and different cybersecurity solutions for many, many years. And some of these companies are active in India, but I'm sure that many more have the potential to operate here. And sometimes, like also mentioned before, it's about to identify and exploit the right partnership between the two sides. So many of these MNCs I mentioned, I would say also that in the past 2 or 3 years, we see even Indian names coming on board. For example, Bangalore-based Wipro has acquired a company in Israel and established Wipro Israel, and Flipkart, they bought some company in Israel and established Flipkart Israel, and we see the Tatas and the Reliance all are more and more aware of the potential of this kind of collaborations, and maybe I should also update this slide. A bit more focus on the startup scene. So again, we up to COVID, but also during COVID times, I would mention that there is an increase financing of startups, increased awareness and interest among international investors in the startup scene. Nowadays, already I think around like $10 billion are allocated to different startup funding. And what is also interesting is that most of it is coming from foreign investors. The fields and the sectors are very diversified. I chose a few of them here because I think this is also could be of interest to India, Indian investors or Indian partners. All the investment in AI is something that is growing and much strong in Israel. This is also a field that is being rapidly developed in India. So I could imagine different kinds of collaborations in AI and also in digital health and cybersecurity and so on. Some of, I think, the leading country in investment in cyber-related innovation is in Israel. But again, living now in the past 4 years in Bangalore, especially, we see a lot of also development and investment in the deep tech and high tech scenes here in Karnataka, in Bangalore. So I think this could be a huge opportunity for collaborations. Automotive, for example, this is an area when Israel even does not have any kind of automotive industry as such. We are not producing cars as such, but in terms of smart mobility and investment in different kinds of aspects that relates to electronic vehicles and different aspects of the mobility areas, we see a lot of companies and a lot of engagement in this area. So again, a few just more slides. Just to share with you again, this kind of emphasize on venture capital funds, about the focus in Israel on investing and R&D expenditure. In a way, this is also something that we always love to see, the amount of dedication and decision to have investing in R&D, 5% of GDP as a world leader. And I think, again, this should be also something that is being developed and being more and more aware also in India. And by the way, most of it coming also from government expenditures, also from foreign expenditures. So a lot of externalities, positive externalities are coming inside once you spend on R&D. This is a slide I wanted to share with you again, and this is throughout the COVID. So we saw a decrease in different kinds of trade volumes, but in a sense, Asia was the least affected in a way, and also from our sources, also India as such our trade was less affected than other places. And again, if we see that India, we have this amount, the dark blue is in 2019 and the light blue is 2020. So you see it's pretty much less severe than other places that were hurt in terms of bilateral trade. And also, again, as overall, to be among the top 10 destination for Israel, it means that India, from our perspective, of course, it's a high priority. If you take the EU as one, so it becomes one of the top 5, top 6. Again, COVID affected all of us, and also in Israel. So pretty much we will see a negative GDP growth during 2020. But we are forecast that in the coming years it will be a positive and more robust kind of GDP to compensate for this year that we had. Again, unemployment was rising and GDP was declining and so on. So it was not that good pictures. And of course, all the travel was banned, no tourism, and of course, less aviation and transportation, air transportation, and so on. With that, again, some kind of analysis, we saw that there are some segments that actually benefited or were resilient during these times. And in terms of software and services and export of services, those are actually show very, very positive result. I guess it's something in parallel for what you see here with the IT companies like Infosys and Wipro and TCS that actually had a very good last 18 months or last year and so on. And in a way, again, we expect that this tourism that were much affected and the exits per se will improve in the coming year. So overall for 2021, and as Ravi also mentions, we really now see people coming back to work in Israel. People can walk without mask outside. And again, just I think the last report I saw is that now we have a new daily infected people around 25 or 30 people or something like that overall in the country. So I guess it takes time because at some point it was looking also very horribly in Israel, just if you were looking for 4 months or 5 months ago. And same in India, I believe that once the recovery will come, it will come very fast. And we should be ready for that. So in terms of the GDP, we expect a growth in Israel, and this already is declining less than 7 to 8% and going back to 4%. And the investment opportunities in the different sectors that we saw over the previous slides, this should be as relevant in the coming months or so. And now it's the time even to be engaged even more before we saw the actual recovery itself. So in a sense, maybe this is a bit of a macro level, but maybe to complement the previous speakers and the speaker after my small talk, is that there are many investment opportunities in Israel. The message I would like to give here is that I think the challenge for all of us is to find the right connection between the two sides, the right partners, in different segments. And again, the message I would like to conclude is that for different members of BCIC, there are different opportunities that you are welcome to approach us as an Israeli consulate here in Bangalore and try to explore that together. Either it's with the governmental different kinds of aid and tools that we have like I4F or other kinds of assistance, but also to connect between business and business and people to people which we love to do. So thank you for this kind attentions, and thank you for organizing this seminar, lovely seminars. And again, looking forward to our collaboration throughout the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Shai Moses. We will hear from the other speaker and then go in for the question and answer session. Now I request Yoel Kadesh, entrepreneur and founder of Shipa from Tel Aviv, Israel, to share his experience of doing business in Israel and India. He is speaking from Israel. Over to you, Dr. Yoel.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Yoel. Thank you, everyone that spoke before me. Very interesting. I just came back actually from almost a month in India, although COVID, but business continues and relationship continues. So I'm quarantined now at home, but very happy to be here. So my journey started in India about 20 years ago in 2001, and came as a representative of an Israeli company, and our target was to find a local partner. After 2 years, we found a partner, and we sold 50% of the company. Until today, it's one of the leading companies in the facade industry in Bombay, and they're working very successful. After that, I came back to India with my own businesses. One was in the fenestration solution, high luxury products imported from Europe to India, and security solutions for hospitality mostly in giving the solutions for compound solutions. About 2.5 years ago, I sold my companies to Indians and returned to Israel thinking that I am retired. But what I had, the experience I had in India was stronger than me. And I came back to India now to share my experience of being a real businessman in India as a foreigner for 20 years, with a lot of ups and downs, but mostly ups and good opportunities. And I thank you, India, for the opportunity. I decided to be like a consulate of economics fair of India in Israel, and we opened Shefa that is connecting, consulting, and guiding people how to do the right things between the two countries. I would like to talk more what we call in Hebrew tachles. It means to the point, and talk as a businessman to businessman, and more talk about the challenges and the opportunities and the way we as businessmen look at the business on a day-to-day journey, and not only with the theoretical. So I started preparing some points that I think that from my experience I gathered throughout the years. One is about the viewpoints of how foreigners are looking at Indian foreign businesses looking at Indian businesses. So we are looking at India and seeing the high-level engineering, the low-cost labor, the potential of the market, the lack, but there are complexity of regulations that we are facing as Indians, and for sure as foreigners, challenges of working with governments, companies, with all the complexity that is carrying with it. But in the other hand, there is a lot of opportunity. In the other hand, Indians, as I see, looking at our business people coming from as foreigners with a little bit suspect, with maybe sometimes a little bit arrogancy. Maybe the foreigners are a little bit arrogant when they come to India. They don't always understand the flexibility and the challenges of the Indian market. They are usually looked as more expensive. They are not always understanding the environment and the culture of the Indian business culture. But all these differences are something that can be gapped and proven with a lot of success stories, what we saw throughout the 20 years I'm in India. Of course, there are stories of failure, but there are many stories of success. In the differences between the business culture, we find a lot of times problems of organization chart, of timing, schedule, sometimes direct and indirect way of talking and doing business together, different thought process, and different hierarchy and structure of the companies. Many of the Indian companies will be family owned, and the organizations in Israel sometimes are coming from a different point of view, and they are structured. And when you talk to the people, you think how to do it and how to bring success stories. And I can add a story that we are doing now together with a very large Israeli company that procured 55% of an Indian company. An agreement was signed and everything looked wonderful on the paper, but when life starts, the challenges are starting, and there is a lot of culture and gapping in order to make the things successfully. And we are facing it day to day in different levels of management and down to the bottom ground level. Advantages of India is the capacity, the respect to technology, the skilled employees, the hardworking people, the willing to adopt technology, and the potential of the growth. So all this comes with India as a package. And we in Israel, I think the three major strengths we are bringing are the technology, efficiency, and innovation. I think the collaboration between these advantages can bring successful stories again and again, because this, when you club these things together, you get a successful story. So our good technologies together with big manufacturers and abilities that India has can accomplish the challenges of India, and the relationship between both countries can only help what Shai spoke about and Jonathan spoke about the personal relation between the countries and the respect each country has to the culture, to the history, and so many common things that we have in the history between Israel and Indians. It can help this relationship to grow. The challenges are big, but the opportunities are wider. We have challenges of equalizing expectations from the day we start talking till the day we complete, and it's unending type of equalizing expectations and talking about them and trying to close the gap between the culture and business culture between the companies. And most important is to respect the difference. We as Israelis need to know we didn't come to change India, and of course India won't change Israel, so we have to respect the differences, work with them together, and find how to close the gap in order to make it better. In summary, I would say that the potential is huge, the complexity and the challenges are big, but we can overcome them in the long term and make both successful stories. So this is my thing. I think there are a lot of stories after 20 years I gathered from India, on India, and about foreigners working in India. I would like to share, but our time is limited. But I know and believe in India and Israel collaborations that can bring a lot of success together. So thank you very much, everyone, and take care and keep safe, and hope to see you back again soon.
Thank you. It was a very short, crisp talk of yours, sir. Ravi sir, would you take it from here for the Q&A?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Yol. I think you know the both sides of the coin. You know the Indian mentality, Indian businesses, and also the Israel. I think this is where you have to play like a catalyst. You should be a catalyst for this improvement of these businesses. And now I think we have a number of questions on the chat. I would request. Starting from the first one, I think. Just 1 minute. Let me have a look. There are some questions to the Consul General itself, and then there are some. I am Anand, and we work in area of open innovation through our platform Sparky Now. Would like to explore association with Israel innovators. Okay, sorry. I think there are some more in the beginning. Yeah, I think Mr. Shai Moses, would you like to take this from Anand? We work in the area of open innovation through our platform Sparky Now. Would like to explore association with Israeli innovators. Probably, I think he should meet you or give more
Yes.
information.
Yeah, Ravi, I don't see the message,
Okay.
but I would mention that again, as the economic department in the consulate, we are trying to work on different kinds of sectors and themes. So whenever you have a specific field that you work on and you look for collaboration, you could please approach us, and we try to examine and tailor-make a potential lead or partner. Overall, I would say that there is a lot of good technology that is not coming to India yet because from Israel, because we haven't found yet this kind of a right partnership. So if you are into exploring these kind of things and looking about kind of a tech transfer or different kinds of arrangements, this is something that we could facilitate, and please approach us. I will mention in the chat my email so everyone could write to me in email and we can take it forward. Also, in this seminar, also I'm here with Ms. Kavita, the trade officer for my team. She can be also a focal point for explore different kinds of collaborations.
I think there is one more question from Vikram Gulecha. He says, I am glad to inform the members that my company, Oshio Water, was awarded for innovation in drinking water under India-Israel Innovation Challenge organized by both the government. We actively work with water companies from Israel. BCIC office is also one of our extreme customers for last year. Thank you, Mr. Prithvi, the opportunity. Okay, I think this is the compliment. I think His Excellency Jonathan, this is from Santosh Kumar. We thank you for the goodwill of friendly country Israel. Okay, that's a compliment to you, sir. And then we have one Mr. Jayant Kumar. Glad to be part of this forum. I am working on Golden Triangle business strategy between India, Israel, and Japan. I work for a Japanese company, Technopro Japan, in Bangalore. We are working on automotive projects, looking forward to enhance our relationship between India and Israel. Mr. Shai, would you like to, or Mr. Jonathan?
So yeah, look, to be honest, I think there's a lot of potential for trilateral cooperation. Japan is an important country. You've seen Shai's presentation. You could not ignore the attributes relating to Japan, Israel over there. Let's say even within academia establishments in Bangalore, there's a lot of collaboration between Israel, Japan, and India. So there definitely could be a lot of potential. I think such suggestion could be sought after in a specific manner. And again, please reach out to us through Kavita, and I'm sure that either Shai or myself could look into it. Depends on the scope.
Yeah, I think Mr. Jayant, I think you should be directly contacting Mr. Shai Moses as well as Kavita so that they can take it forward. And I think there's one more question. My question is to His Excellency Jonathan Zarka. What are the opportunities for a defense tech company incubating in Israel?
All right, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of potential, and especially it really depends on the field. Like you said earlier, defense is a key element in trade and R&D between Israel and India, but it does in a specific manner. Security and then the defense industry in Israel is done in a specific manner. So it really again depends on the specification here. I can say at the same time that many of the relevant Israeli companies that deals with defense, arms, and so on have a very tangible presence on the ground in India. So this link could be done very easily if there is if there's potential, or at least we can easily check if there's such potential, and then later on we can seek other opportunities. Again, please reach out to us. We'll be very happy to look into it.
I would like to add over here
Please.
that just now we are experiencing in the last year a Bangalore company that actually we connected them to one of the biggest defense companies in Israel that was sourcing the part that we are sourcing today in India only in Switzerland and France. And after a hard work, we succeeded to convince to make a mock-up in India. And today, this Bangalore supplier is supplying to the Israeli high-level defense solutions that are nobody thought can be done in India. And I think this will open door for other companies as well that can open a door for them to come into these high-level defense companies. So the opportunities are there and the success stories are there as well.
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Uh, I, can you hear me?
Yeah, Ravi, we can hear.
We can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear now. Please go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so basically, I think Bangalore is one of the defense, I would say the defense capital of India, where where HAL and other companies are already located, and a lot of focus is done by the government of India on manufacturing in India, make in India, particularly in the defense area. And I think that would be since Israel is also exporting in a big way, I think there's a very good opportunity for both Indian and Israeli companies to in the defense area. The next question is Mr. Pranav. He says, glad to be a part of this forum. I work for XNG Automation Solutions Private Limited. We are an engineering solutions company working majorly in factory automation and e-commerce parcel. I am here hoping to focus on technology and engineering activities with Israeli companies in our area of work. I think Dr. Shai, would you like to say something?
Sure. So again, one of the feedbacks maybe I could share is that for a good business to conduct between India and Israel, we see that that the Israeli side usually asks, wants to understand exactly what is the value proposition and what is the exact offer that the Indian side could provide them. So either it's for the engineering kind of service or kind of interactions that you want to sell to a Israeli company, or if you want to buy something from the Israeli company, what I would suggest is always think of what exactly do you want to achieve in this kind of interaction? What is your proposals? You want to provide some kind of service. What exactly this kind of service? What is your capabilities and so on? And once we have a bit more or good clarity about this opportunity, then it's easier also for us as a government, as a diplomatic mission, to try and maybe assist in this endeavor. So one of the things is to understand, again, what is my situation at the moment. If I want to upgrade my capabilities, maybe doing some kind of a tech transfer to upgrade my manufacturing capabilities or service. And if I want to sell something, again, what is your unique proposition that makes you very attractive in compared to the competition?
Thank you, sir. I think we have another question from Rajendra Desai. Sir, do you have a section at the embassy to facilitate academic collaborations with Israel universities?
Yes, we do. We have academia department and somebody who deals with such collaboration. And I think in Israel, there's also a very good platform combining industry and academics. And I will be very happy again to look into it. I'll add my email as well, and please feel free to send out a specific request and approach us, and we'll try to do our best to respond.
Right. So the next question is from Hitesh Jawad. Dear sir, do you plan to do contract farming also in India, either to showcase your products or technology available for the Indian tropical climate?
So, Shai, maybe I can start, and you'll follow up on this. I think it's a complicated question or remark.
Please go.
So the already in India we have approximately 30 centers of excellence, which basically relate to different sort of states in India and different sorts of needs. And I'll give I think the two that are closest one to Bangalore would be one in Kolar, which relates to mangoes, as you mentioned before, and the other one is in Tamil Nadu, which relates to flowers, and I think lately also to vegetables. In both of them, you can find basic Israeli irrigation technology, and when I say basic, it's sophisticated drip irrigation relating to this. And also some techniques about the promotion or the whole cycle of agriculture relating to the specific needs over there. These are deeply connected to the local and central government's schemes and subsidy schemes regarding small farmers, but you can basically identify anything that relates to technology and to the specific needs in these areas. And aside from that, of course, there's other elements, but these would be, I think, relating to that question. I think this would be the most important thing to mention.
I will just
Sure, I have
add
question to-
that in the I4F, this kind of a bilateral R&D fund that we mentioned before, there was some collaborations that we initiated as a consulate in our region between a company called Viodia and Agro Solar in Israel, and that was about connecting solar energy to drip irrigation kind of systems when you need to drill down quite deeply into the soil. And this kind of R&D received the funding, was approved as a project, and we see a very good collaborations, Indo-Israeli collaboration in this regard. So if you take the Center of Excellence and you can some opportunities in doing some R&D together on the agricultural front, I think there is a very good room to do some development in the agri-tech domain.
Sir, the next question is from Jayant Kumar. Please suggest if there is any opportunity to work on electric vehicle solutions such as battery management system, powertrain, inverter technologies, motor control or embedded software solutions. We are keen to work with Israeli partner on cyber security solutions.
Yeah, so again, this should be, as I mentioned before, if you want to work together with some Israeli partners, please, approach us, see what you want to, exactly what you want to work on, what is your offer, what you're looking from Israel. As much as concrete you can be, the more helpful it can be to establish such a dialogue.
The next question is from Benny Katta. Hello, people, this is Benny Katta. We are in the international NGO involved in creating SME and MSME sustainable economy. Can we explore synergies and business interests and collaborations? I think they should, personally, I think these are all questions, probably they should specifically write emails to you. I think we already have the email. And then the next question is, can you share some good success stories, collaboration of Israel companies in India or Indian companies in Israel? Can you name a few?
Yes, so I mentioned, for example, Flipkart in the e-commerce that acquired the upstream commerce, some kind of data analytics for e-commerce. This was also something that we were engaged as a consulate. I can mention to you sometimes people less aware of, but in terms of water desalination, we have IDE and Tahal, good companies working in India also established their own subsidiaries in India, and people in the cyber domain like Checkpoint and others. Again, in different fields, we see different collaborations, but it's come back to what we all the seminar is discussing about the people to people and kind of direct kind of connections and engagement as such. So from where I sit, I see a lot of good collaborations. I see success stories. I see different again. I look at dental, okay, some of the crowns we have in our tip in India, it's coming from Israel. People not aware. Different kinds of collaborations when you think of defense and agri-tech and pest control and many diversified fields. So this is why when I say that each member of BCIC, whatever his profession is in his domain, there could be a potential for collaborations, but we need to understand exactly what each person brings to the table.
I think there's
Can I-
one more question from
I
Pranav.
want to add. I want to add
Yeah.
about the success stories. Can I?
Yeah, please.
Please.
Yeah, please. So yes, we are facing good success stories, and yes, unfortunately, we are facing failures as well. But we'll talk today about we learn from the failures, and we'll talk about the success. I spoke now about a company that was related to the defense, and we are doing organic farming from India in Israel. We developed solutions. We are doing in the building materials. We have two companies today that we are bringing from India to Israel and collaborated between them. I would say that the biggest advantage is the high level technology solutions and not the mass. Over there, India has a wonderful experience and wonderful solutions that can help Israelis. And I can say more and more success stories. My company that we sold is today one of the leading in India. There is two technology companies that we brought to partnership in India, in Bangalore actually. They are very successful in selling the technology from Israel in India. We have success stories in the water treatment of companies from Israel that were collaborated with companies from Bombay, but it's very good success story in India. So in many sectors, we have success stories, and we have to remember that it's a challenge, it's not obvious, and it's hard work. And we do recommend that at the end of the day, to work with, there are many professionals from Shai to other consultants, but use as much as possible because they are the bridge that can make the business successful at the end.
I have one question. I have one question for our president, Mr. Parsuram, sir. Please shoot your question, sir.
Thank you, Ravi ji. And I think it was a wonderful session. Thanks, Honorable Consulate General Mr. Janardhan, Mr. Shai Moses, and Mr. Yohi. I think it's a wonderful session that we could hear. So I have one suggestion. We can collaborate Bangalore chambers with Israeli chambers or industries. Like from Bangalore chambers, we are conducting a lot of programs on manufacturing, human resource development, ITBT, IoT 4.0, which is very active on the startups. So probably we can have a collaboration with your country, and probably we can also open our programs to the members from Israeli also. So this is a kind of a knowledge development sharing program. So today the biggest advantage is no physical programs. So everything is virtual platform. So if there is a possibility, we would like to get a larger audience also. It's a win-win situation. We can make our programs open to your engineers. Yes, we have a very active cell of engineers. We have 18 committees working round the clock. And I think today is the 127th event happening today, even in spite of the COVID situation. Therefore, if there is a possibility, definitely we can collaborate and we can make the participation at a bigger level. What do you think about it?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, for hosting us today and for everything. And I think that's the point. I mean, exactly what we want to do. We want to make sure that this is not a single-time engagement. I know that this is not, of course, this is not the first time you've done this a lot in the past, but we want to continue in the same manner. And I think to put you with an Israeli audience would also be very important. I think what we've done here today, if we would also have an Israeli audience, would have been extremely nice. I think the engagement and the back and forth could have even been more interesting. And may I suggest perhaps we can approach Israel India Chamber of Commerce in Israel. I don't know if you're in touch with them directly or not. But we can easily put you in touch with them, and then we can perhaps have a joint session. I think this could be very much appropriate. I don't know what's your schedule these days. I'm sure you're overwhelmed, but we can take advantage of the fact that we do things virtually these days, and perhaps have this in the upcoming weeks. That shouldn't be very complicated to arrange, and I think if there's interest from your side, I'm sure that the Israeli side would be also
because it's a
very
bigger
keen.
audience and economies of scale. We are throwing our programs open. So we have both, free programs. Most of the last year we had a lot of free programs. Some are chargeable programs for members and non-members, but it will be a very, very small amount. It's hardly, almost insignificant. So that way we throw it open to a larger audience. The value addition happens, and our true vision is not only to go pan-India, but to grow pan-global. In fact, I'm trying to open an office in Tokyo. I'm already discussing the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, because a lot of investments coming from Japan to the state of Karnataka. And we have a lot of big Japanese companies in Karnataka. And I myself lived in Japan a long time back. And, it's very easy to connect with such countries. And Israel is also one such country. You already mentioned English speaking is very common between India and Israel. And, we have a lot of similar culture. So definitely we can work on these platforms to enrich values on a mutual interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Parshuraman, you rightly said. In fact, I had the opportunity of having a talk with the Israeli Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Z Live or some person there, the Director General there. I am sure we have an office of the Indo-Israeli Chamber of Commerce in Bangalore. It's a small office, but still we will, as rightly mentioned by Mr. President, we'll have a next program with a number of invitees. We also take the help of Mr. Yoel and see that more Israel participants are also there, and we can have a very good interactive session. And
that'll be brilliant. That'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, one small, on a lighter vein, I wanted to say something. When I went to Israel, I went to a farm and I saw some donkeys there. I asked them, what are these donkeys doing here? Then they said, sir, we do organic farming and we export 100% to Europe. And I said, okay, what is organic got to do with the donkey? They said, no, sir, we don't use any of the pesticides for the weeds. To remove the weeds, we use the donkeys to remove the weeds. So we are 100% organic. So, and when we saw the bananas, everything was covered with a plastic cover. I asked them, why are you doing it? They said, the plastic covers are covered so that there are no pests which gets into the banana. It's absolutely 100% neat. See, these are things which we don't even imagine in India. And they say the fruit should be so nice when it is exported, otherwise it is rejected. So, I mean, well, I thought I should share this with you.
The big, beautiful companies are there in Israel. We really respect them. I think one such tooling company is Iskar. I think the Indian companies use a lot of toolings from that company. And, the Israelis, their eye for mathematics and analytics is amazing, actually. So I think we have a lot of common platforms. Definitely, we can collaborate in whatever way possible, as rightly said by Mr. Ravi.
So I think we have come to the chats. Most of the chats have been, most of the questions have been addressed by our speakers here. What I would probably, since they have already shared their emails, I'm sure all our members can surely contact them directly and get to know their clarifications or take it forward. And I think now probably this is the right time. We're already running a little late, about 15 minutes late. I would request our co-chairman, Mr. Bose Nair, to propose a hearty vote of thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. Good evening. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber and Industry and Commerce, it's an honor for me to propose the vote of thanks to His Excellency Mr. Jonathan Sadke, Consul General of Israel to South India, Dr. Shai Moses, Council for Trade and Economic Affairs, Mr. Yoel Kadish, the entrepreneur and mentor from Israel, for their valuable time in sharing their views. As mentioned by our president, the diplomatic ties between India and Israel were formally established in 1992. Since then, the bilateral relationship between the two countries has blossomed at the economic, military, agriculture, and political level. Now, even the e-commerce side too. The understanding of the relation reflected in growing connections between the business sector in India and Israel. BCIC will act as a catalyst in strengthening the Indo-Israel business relationships and extend its support to a diplomatic mission. As suggested by His Excellency, it's a welcome step to have a tie-up with the Israel Chamber of Commerce and the Bangalore Chamber of Commerce for strengthening the educational field as well as how we can take it forward the international trade. Thanks to our President, Mr. Parasuram, for his able leadership, and Mr. Ravi, Chairman of the International Business Committee, for his guidance and support for making this platform as vibrant and result-oriented. Thanks to each and every participant, press and media, for attending the interactive session. Our sincere thanks to ICICI Bank for their support. Last but not least, appreciation to all the Secretariat for their hard work and making this session a wonderful session. Thank you very much. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Bose Nair. So since this session is being on virtual platform, we would like to honor and acknowledge the speakers for today's session. A small virtual memento, which will be handed over to the respective offices shortly, once the COVID situation comes back to normal. Before we conclude, let's have our two national anthems played. First will be from the Israel national anthem. I request you to kindly stand up for this.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे लागे सब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, one and all, for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye
Keep
bye.
safe. Bye bye, everyone.